Good evening. Hi, everyone. Welcome to All the Things. I am Monique Duson, and this is the show where we talk about all things related to God, life, and the Bible. Now, if you notice that something's missing or someone is missing, Krista is not here tonight. Womp, womp, womp. Yeah, she had a work event, and she is sending her hellos and her love and her prayers, both for me and y'all, because tonight that means I'm flying solo. And I don't really know how I feel about that in my spirit. I'm a little nervous, but you know what? I think it'll be fine. And I'm really excited. I think more than anything, I'm so excited about our show. But before we get into all that, please take some time and comment in the comments, either on YouTube or on Facebook. And let us know where you're from. Ask questions. I'm doing my best to make sure that I moderate the comments on both. And then, just let us know what you think. We have an amazing show today. Please make sure to share the show. That is the best way. If you want to support the show, please share the show. Let's see. I'm going to just read that really quick. Bob, do you have anything to say before I keep going?
Hello there.
Awesome.
So she's not completely alone. I'm over here punching buttons and
alone.
stuff. But you're doing great.
Thanks.
You're doing great.
Make sure to catch last week's replay of our show with Sam Lively. We talked about all things related to Disney and how we are in an age where a lot of what our children see is really reflective of culture, and how a lot of the storytelling from Disney is helping to indoctrinate them into a culture that's more focused on things like critical theory. So make sure to catch that. Sam was awesome, and it's a really good show.
Great.
Well, thanks. We got a little shouting section in the back. And let's run down our show today. First, we are going to talk with Obianuju Ekeocha. I probably said her name wrong. I'm really sorry, but she's an awesome, awesome woman. She lives in the UK, but she's Nigerian born, and she's a pro-life international activist. She does a lot of work relating to advocacy for pregnant women and speaking out on behalf of the unborn, especially in Africa, as she sees abortion really coming in from the United States, the idea of abortion coming in from the United States and really being imported into the African continent with expediency. And so we're going to talk about all that, and also how she sees abortion relating, abortion topics and all of that being portrayed in the UK and also here in the States. And then MLK, Martin Luther King Day, is this coming Monday. We celebrate his birthday. His birthday actually just passed. I believe it was January 15th. And so we'll celebrate his life on January 15th. But we actually have some information and research that's little known about him. And so we'll talk about his legacy, but we'll also talk about his theology and his views about Christ and orthodoxy and all of that. So that is going to come later. And we don't have a tweet of the week this week because our tweeter isn't here. So no. But we do have a really good show because of the time with the time difference between the UK and here. We had to pre-record the interview, but it's still amazing. Feel free to ask some questions. I will do my best to answer them. And whatever we don't know or whatever I don't know, we'll make sure to answer next week. So, all right. Actually, let me give a little bit of backstory before we start playing that. Krista and I have been talking about how can we bring up the topic of abortion and pro-life issues. Last month, there was a Bishop Wooden from Upper Room Church of God in Christ. He's Kojic. Now, if you ever been to a Kojic church, you know that thing. That's all I can say. They have an amazing, I love like the Kojic church and the way they worship and all of that. But the fact that this pastor, he's a Black pastor, he spoke out about abortion and the impact of abortion in the Black community. Krista and I were thinking, you know what, that's really important. It's an important topic because a lot of abortion facilities are usually held in lower income areas. They impact Black communities at a larger proportion. And so this guy is speaking out on it. And we were like, I wonder how else we can, bring this into the show and present it to you. So let me show you this clip first.
They're running a commercial on Black radio. Black radio. They're not running it on white radio. They're running it on Black radio. And they're telling the Black folk on the commercials that the president has cut funding to Planned Parenthood, and it's designed to affect women's health care choices. And so this is supposed to hurt us. But what they're not telling our Black people in the commercial, the funding that he cut is abortion. And he told Planned Parenthood, I won't cut this money if you promise us with this money you won't do abortions. They said, no, we're going to keep doing our abortion. He said, then you're not going to get the money. With the way abortion disproportionately affects us, I praise the Lord for that. I think that's a good move, because I think we ought to live. We have a right to live. We have a right to live. We make up 13% of the population. Our women make up 8% of the 13%, and the ovulating women make up 3% of that 8%. So that 3% of women are responsible for 39% of the nation's abortions. And I thank God for every effort that slows that process down. And as we've often said, that if there's someone here today who has had an abortion and you've repented, you're forgiven, praise the Lord. But since they're targeting us. And here's what these people count on. I want this out there. They count on Black people being stupid.
Y'all, he said what he said. He said what he said. I am not mad at him. I am just like, wow, he put it all the way out there. And this clip got a lot of heat. People were, how can you say that? And it's our right to choose. And he said what he said. He said what he said. And there is a target for lower income communities. There is a target toward the Black community. And what we also see is that Hollywood perpetuates this idea that it's okay. It's okay to abort your baby. It's okay for you to just choose. You're choosing what's best for you. It wasn't your choice to get pregnant. You just accidentally stumbled upon pregnancy. And so now you get to choose to, not have your baby. And so with this thought process happening in Hollywood, I think it was taken up a notch at the Golden Globes when Michelle Williams came out. And I'm not sure if you guys saw this, but the Golden Globes are a major award show. And Michelle Williams, a prominent actress, came out and during her acceptance speech was thanking the fact that she could, use her right to choose. She was giving praise to this idea and saying, she's so glad that she was able to choose to have an abortion because of her career, and she doesn't want to have to stop her career and things like that. So let's watch this.
Thank you so much. First of all, to my Fosse Verdon family and to the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. When you put this in someone's hands, you're acknowledging the choices that they make as an actor, moment by moment, scene by scene, day by day, but you're also acknowledging the choices they make as a person, the education they pursued, the training they sought, the hours they put in. I'm grateful for the acknowledgement of the choices I've made, and I'm also grateful to have lived at a moment in our society where choice exists, because as women and as girls, things can happen to our bodies that are not our choice. I've tried my very best to live a life of my own making, not just a series of events that happened to me, but one that I could stand back and look at and recognize my handwriting all over, sometimes messy and scrawling, sometimes careful and precise, but one that I had carved with my own hand. And I wouldn't have been able to do this without employing a woman's right to choose.
So that video immediately was everywhere, being played everywhere on social media. And our guest, Uju, as we call her, and as she's like known everywhere, made a tweet and responded to it. And so we have that. She said, Hollywood is an ivory city built on top of a bloody foundation of broken bones and bodies of innocent babies. The unacknowledged group of slaughtered victims is the group of unborn babies of Hollywood stars who have been and who continue to be sacrificed on the altar of success. And she said what she said. She did not mix words. And that's what I really appreciate about her. We're going to get started with this interview, and I'll be right back. Okay, welcome to our pre-recorded session. This is a time where we're going to talk about something really important in culture at this moment, abortion. We have a very special guest on. We call her Uju. Her full name is Obianuju Ekeocha. She is originally from Nigeria. She currently resides in the UK, and she's done amazing work in the realm of pro-life and really speaking out for justice and values of the unborn. She's a scientist, and you look like you were going to jump in and say something.
No, I just want to make sure people can get her website so they get connected with her. She's the founder and president of Culture of Life Africa. And you can go to cultureoflifeafrica, all one word, .com.
We'll have that on the lower third.
Yeah. And also follow her on Twitter because she makes amazing tweets.
Yes, she does.
She's one of my favorite
They are
tweeters.
Out there, just straightforward. So good.
Yes.
So good. Okay, so welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I'm really grateful to be on your show. So glad to be here today to discuss these important things with you.
Yes.
We're so excited to have you here. Would you mind by starting out, like telling us a little bit about yourself?
Right. So I, as you said, my name is Obianuju Ekeocha. I am a Nigerian woman living in the United Kingdom, born and raised in the southeastern part of Nigeria, had been to university at the University of Nigeria, had started working at a hospital in Nigeria, and then came to the United Kingdom at the age of 26, was living very happily. I was never really intending to do any kind of pro-life activism. I have always been pro-life, though, so it's always good that I tell people that from the offset. I grew up in a pro-life society, grew up in a country that didn't have legal abortion. People were not agitating for legal abortion. And up to today, where I come from, people are still really not agitating for legal abortion in most parts of the country. So I didn't intend to do any kind of, this kind of activism. But then in 2012, I was watching television one day, and I saw the wife of Bill Gates, Melinda Gates, her name is, advocating for some kind of population control project in Africa. And I really got upset, and I wrote something about what she was planning to do at the time. And that then became known as the open letter to Melinda Gates, which went viral shortly after. And the rest is history. So that's really how I got involved in doing this kind of pro-life advocacy, because it is pro-life advocacy, really, but it's a little different than what most people are used to seeing when it comes to pro-life advocacy, because I speak a lot about Africa and the Western countries in relation to African countries.
Wow. Well, I'm glad that you made that tweet and that it went viral because it's created such a platform to be able to speak out for the unborn.
Yes.
Yeah.
So at the time back then it was blogs. So I had written a whole letter. I wrote a 2,000 worded letter. Now these days we do more tweets. But it was the open letter to Melinda Gates, and people can still see it now if you went to Google or something and searched for the open letter to Melinda Gates or something, anything like that. You might still be lucky enough to find it.
Wow.
So I've been working in this realm since. I have been doing pro-life advocacy since 2012, 2013. But I also have remained a scientist. I was always working as a scientist in the UK. I had finished my master's and I was working by the time I did this. I wrote this open letter to Melinda Gates. So I did decide eventually to still remain a scientist. I work as a biomedical scientist in the area of hematology. So I work in pathology. And I still actively am doing pro-life work. So it's me taking on extra duties to myself. But I think when God wants something, he gets to make a way so that we can carry whatever it is that he wants us to carry in the way of mission.
Very good. Wow, I'm so inspired already.
Right? Right? It's like everyday superheroes in our midst.
That's
yes.
right.
Yes.
No way.
Okay, so last Sunday, I believe it was last Sunday.
Yeah, a week ago Sunday, yeah.
Michelle Williams came out at the Golden Globes and spoke openly about abortion. I believe it was her personal experience with abortion and her right to choose and things like that. And you made a pretty provocative tweet about it. What were your thoughts about her speech?
Yeah, so we have seen Hollywood, especially in the last couple of years, becoming ever more so vocal about abortion issues. As I said, sorry, I'll just take a bigger picture view here. I grew up in Nigeria, and we were always kind of tied to Hollywood. We're always so engrossed by Hollywood, even as an African girl, looking up to America. But the America that I knew was the America we saw in movies, in good movies. So imagine me now living in the West and taking in the way these Hollywood actors and actresses are advocating for abortion. What a disappointment. What a huge disappointment on the local scale for the American people, but also on the international scale for those of us who come from a pro-life world outside of the West and who have always seen Hollywood as the real heroes, as the people who have told these stories, as the people who were, the real lovers of justice and human rights. So Michelle Williams, taking her award at the Golden Globes, talking about how her life wouldn't have been what it became had she not exercised her right to choose. Those were, I think, her exact words.
Yeah.
So in other words, implying that she had aborted her own baby. For those people who don't know Michelle Williams very well, because I don't think her name is household, but many of us knew Heath Ledger. That's Heath Ledger's wife when he died. That's Heath Ledger's widow. Mm-hmm. So this is a woman who, in a way, many people's hearts would have been with her. But then she's now going back telling us about this child she may have aborted. We don't know if it was Heath Ledger's child. We don't know. It doesn't matter whose child it was. But what she's saying is that as a woman, or what she was implying is that as a woman, we cannot really make it in life. We cannot be professionally successful unless we choose to end or sacrifice the lives of our unborn children. What a horrible disappointment. And of course, the reaction as well to her speech, or to that part of her speech, which was also something else I was tweeting about. It was the fact that she was saying gladly that she aborted her child, and it led her to the Golden Globes. But then it was also the reaction of her fellow Hollywood actors and actresses who were sitting there. They were all applauding. Some of them were cheering. They were, kind of celebrating the fact that she was shouting her abortion. And I noticed during the time that the camera was going round, one particular woman who had also kind of been in the news, her name is Busy Phillips, who had shouted her abortion or talked about her abortion or boasted about her abortion a couple of months ago. So she was also smiling and kind of crying and rejoicing over that. It's a shame. And that Hollywood is setting this kind of example for women. It really is quite disheartening.
Yeah, it's hard to think about. I guess I'm kind of a career woman. I've had a family. My faith is a huge part of my life and shaping the life choices that I've made. And women do sometimes have challenges, and we do sometimes have to make life adjustments, and we do sometimes have to slow our career down. But those sacrifices seem worth it to us. And to think about killing my child for the sake of my career, honestly, it's hard for me to even imagine that as a thought. But I know that many people do look at it that way and from that worldview standpoint. But I don't know if it has to be either or. I've been pretty successful in my career. I've achieved a lot. And I had 2 children and I homeschooled them for a good chunk of years. But the messages in our culture, and Hollywood is certainly an icon of like, these are our values, and young girls look to them. It's troubling.
It is very troubling. Precisely because everyone is watching Hollywood, and people are sometimes taking their lives direction, in a sense of speaking, from Hollywood, and it is a shame, really, because I believe that abortion is a human rights issue. If it is a human rights issue, the same Hollywood is out there speaking about social justice issues, and they are campaigning for things and campaigning for human rights, but then they are coming out on one of the most important platforms and really telling the world that it is all right to kill the most vulnerable in society. And they're celebrating one over that. And it's not even that Hollywood is like advocating choice. This is the on-choice, because they are not even making room for pro-life anything on their platform. If there was a pro-life actor or actress, I don't believe that in this day and age, with the current climate in Hollywood, that they can come out to give a speech and even imply that they are pro-life. That's now almost not allowed, or we're not seeing that, but we are seeing more and more people advocating for abortion, advocating for an organization like Planned Parenthood, and moving the cause of death really from one of the most glamorous platforms that there is now in the world.
I agree completely. Many things that you said were just like resonating with me. I think that the current cultural climate in Hollywood that promotes choice isn't just speaking to the middle-aged woman, or, like that 30-some-year-old woman who, is making her own choices and trying to live her own life. And, that's still, wrong. And I'm not saying by any means that that's okay to have an abortion just because you're trying to make your own way or anything like that. But what I am saying is that they're speaking to younger generations. They're speaking to the 12-year-old, to the 11-year-old, or the young teenager who now says, well, it's my right. It's my body. It's my right. It's my choice. And because Michelle Williams came out and said, oh, look what she did, that's also a viable option for me. And so I think that Hollywood is very aware of what they're doing, but I don't know that we as consumers or as viewers are often so aware of what is happening, what's being platformed, and the message that's given to the younger audiences.
Yeah, and that's why it is propaganda. That's what a propaganda is. It is promoted through these powerful channels, but people who are doing it know the messaging is very conscious, is very well planned out, well choreographed, very sleek messaging. But the people who are consuming it in most cases do not realize. A lot of the movies that are being made now, a lot of the sitcoms that are being made now, a lot of the series that are being made now are now framing abortion. Many of them are including abortion. In fact, I read somewhere a few months ago that Planned Parenthood had advised in Hollywood for different shows in the last couple of years about 150 times. So even within Planned Parenthood as an organization, PPFA, Planned Parenthood Federation of America, there is a position of like something like entertainment director, someone whose job is to engage with people who are producing entertainment. So if they have such a high position within their organization, that means we all have to sit up and we have to open our eyes and see exactly the kind of propagandization that is going on with regards to abortion.
Yeah. And another point you made that I wanted to hit on was that this is global. It may appear like, oh, this is in America, but I know that when I was in South Africa, and many of the young people were emulating the things that they saw on Hollywood television. And that just goes into this whole thing and the conversation about abortion because, oh, well, if they do it in Hollywood, oh, that's how it is in America. I want to do the things that they do in America. And so it just continues to spiral, and this snowball just grows as to the things that that people think in other countries are acceptable.
Yes. Uju, do you think that we are exporting abortion into Africa and into other countries?
Without a doubt. And it's happening through various channels. So just to finish up this last thought from Monique, so people who are in the other parts of the world, they're watching Hollywood productions, they are watching like music videos and things like that, and they are picking up these things. People associate America or other parts of the developed world, like Europe, as the better life. So the better life, everything is nicer in America. And so if abortion is being put in this, basket of goodies, that means it has to be good. So gradually it's seeping in through into other cultures that otherwise would not have been, kind of promoting abortion or embracing abortion. Abortion is very much in most parts of the African continent. Out of the 55 African countries, 4 countries have what you call abortion on demand. Most of the other African countries have refused. Not only that they don't have legal abortion, but they've refused to legalize abortion. They don't want abortion. They continue to insist on it. Anytime that is pushed towards their parliaments and different houses of legislature, it's always pushed down because there is such overwhelming rejection of it by the populations. So whereas among the young people in these countries, they are now picking up, the language of abortion, the very nice one, the one that says pro-choice, the one that presents it as a woman's right to choose, as Michelle Williams said, the one that sees it as like an acceptable thing, as healthcare, as some people are now packaging it. The one I just saw yesterday and I've been commenting on since yesterday is that abortion is normal as an art exhibition in New York City. So all of these things seep through to the developing world, African nations, Latin American countries, even Southeast Asian countries, places where, they don't want abortion. So, but then there is another powerful channel that abortion is coming, because for a while, we have had this propaganda coming through entertainment, and it's not a huge surprise. But the one that is most surprising is that governments are now in on it. Western governments are now in on it. And this is what has now made it to become a real exportation from the West. It's that we are having the West really exporting this particular, this particular culture, which is so terrible. So in the recent times, EU countries have gotten very much behind funding what they're calling reproductive health in the developing world. And a lot of that has to do with abortion. United States in the past has also funded, unfortunately, organizations that are abortion organizations like International Planned Parenthood. Now that has stopped in the last couple of years. United Kingdom, where I live, they have been funding a very horrible abortion organization called Marie Stopes International that we see all over the African continent. And so with government funding, very large amounts of funding, they are getting dollars and euros and pounds going into African countries, going into other parts of the developing world, bringing in this culture, lobbying our governments effectively. And so it's being done on the 2 levels of society. It's being done at the center of power, which is the political power, and it's also being done at the point of culture, which is really trying to get the very young people, but they're not ready to wait for those young people to grow up. So they're trying to get the young African generations, and then they're also just going straight to the heart of our politics, and they're fighting these battles. So just to answer your question, yes, abortion is being imported into African countries and other parts of the developing world.
Wow.
That's very sobering.
It is. Yeah. It is.
It's very sobering. So I heard you talk in another interview about the 1994 Cairo conference, and I think this is a good moment to maybe bring that up too, because that was a pivotal moment that I think most Americans probably aren't aware of.
Yeah, I wasn't.
But I think it's important for us to know about that.
Yeah, so in 1994, the United Nations, which for people who don't know, I mean, everyone knows the UN as this one big organization, but I think how you should think about the UN is more as a collection of smaller agencies that are powerful anyway, making up this giant monster of an organization. So the United Nations has as part of it UNFPA, which is the United Nations Population Fund. They also have another agency that is called the UN Women. And then they have UNICEF, and of course, everything else that people know, UNDP, they know all these other organizations that people know about. But the major ones that I'm going to talk about are these two, UNFPA and the UN Women. These are, kind of baby agencies of the United Nations, powerful within their own rights, huge within their own rights. These organizations get a lot of money from Western countries. A lot of the battle they're having now with America is that America has recently been talking about defunding them, which, they haven't had for so many years. And so they're going crazy. So UNFPA, the population control arm of the United Nations, if I can call them that, in 1994, they held one of the annual conferences, but this was meant to be a landmark conference. It was a conference on population and development, the CPD, or the International Conference on Population and Development. So they went all the way to Cairo, Egypt, in Africa, to hold this particular landmark one that they said was going to change everything. They had been having it previously and, talking about the populations and population growth and, the different aspects of population, if you like. But when they went out to Cairo, something changed because it was at the Cairo conference that they decided to bring to the level of humanitarian aid everything that has to do with reproductive health, which was not the case before. So everyone, of course, knows it's undeniable that African nations have been struggling economically. It hasn't been news that people have to send food and water and all of that. From the 1980s, you would see hungry children from Africa. We know these images, right? Even though, yes, it's arguable. Sometimes they are kind of a romanticized vision of Africa, which is not necessarily always accurate. But it's not a surprise. People see African pictures and all that, and it's all about, if someone's reason was always to help Africa. So yes, Africa has been a destination of humanitarian aid for a very long time. So in 1994, though, something changed, because whereas a lot of the money going in was being allocated for food, for water and sanitation, for real health care, for education, for infrastructure, the economies and all of that, we never really heard it that condoms could ever really be at the same level as food and water. But that was exactly what happened in Cairo, that the United Nations then put this they put documents together, the so-called working document, then stated that really, if you decide to give $10 million worth of condom to a country in a developing country, is the same as giving them $10 million worth of food, just to make everyone feel better. So they had all of the discussions on all of that, and the agreement was made. But ever since 1994, everything has now changed on the humanitarian aid level, because all the countries, Western countries, especially the ones who are very much ideologically driven, then started putting a lot of money into more money into population control issues, to the point that I have a graph of it that I usually show during my presentations, to the point where as of I think by 2013, the population control funding has now exceeded everything else. It started as the lowest in the 90s, but it's now come to the point where African nations are now getting either the equivalent, the just equal amounts of money for things like important things like healthcare, as well as population. And even in some cases, things like education and water and sanitation are getting less and less attention. So this has really been a horrible setback for African countries. Everything that they promised us will come through this kind of funding has definitely not come, because it's been more than 10 years. It's been 25 years since the Cairo conference, because they've just held a 25-year anniversary of it, again in Africa. They went all the way to Nairobi to hold another big population control conference back in November, a couple of months ago. And they keep kind of doubling down on it, that this is the way to go. That to give humanitarian aid is really to give population control. That's what the Cairo conference is all about. That is what they have advocated through the United Nations ever since. Every year, they still have the ICPD, that International Conference on Population Development, but usually at the United Nations. I have gone for a couple of those, and it's always, very disturbing, because when you go there, a lot of the people you see at these conferences will be the usual people, International Planned Parenthood, International Planned Parenthood Federation, IPPF. You would see all the abortion, the DKT internationals. You see the so-called reproductive health organizations. They are all there, and they're asking the United Nations for one thing. They're asking for more money. They're asking for more attention. They're asking for more access to the poor countries. So it's a shameful thing, but it's also one that we see shaping a lot of things.
So I'm taking it from your statements that population control sounds like it might be a euphemism for abortion. Is that, and reproductive health? Those are two terms I keep hearing you use. They sound very beautiful. They sound very pretty. But really what we're talking about is abortion. And I'm very kind of disturbed by that, to be quite honest, because I can see, and I think what disturbs me is I feel like the Africans are being targeted with this, that there's somewhat of your continent needs population control. We need less African people on the planet. And I don't know, is that really part of what's in play here? Is that part of the mindset?
Yeah, but they are denying it all the same. They continue to deny it, and they say that it's not population control. But when you look at their budget, they actually list these things as population programs. So population programs, yes, it will include abortion, of course, but then it will also include something much more indicative of the long game that they are playing. They put in a lot of the resources for population programs into the so-called CSE, Comprehensive Sexuality Education, which has all to do with getting to the young children. So it is about bringing in this kind of re-education plan, getting into schools in the smallest villages in the most remote part of the world, teaching children these new terms that are like reproductive health, choice, and things, this, that, and the other, in places where they may not even have food and water. Nobody cares, but they're going in there, and they're going there to teach them about their sexual rights, telling them about, my body, my choice. I mean, the kind of things that we see sometimes when we go to remote places, villages. I have been to villages in Africa where we couldn't find passable roads. We couldn't find clean drinking water, but we found billboards, massive billboards of condoms near schools, near churches. But we are really being targeted in the most in the most ridiculous ways. And the world is just staying blind to it. It's almost like it's okay, first of all, it's almost like nobody cares. So it's all part of the plan. It's comprehensive sexuality education. They're trying so desperately to force us to accept their own version and their own definition of human sexuality, how people should be talking about sex, that it's sex without responsibilities, more sexual rights. It's not sexual responsibility, but sexual rights, which comes before anything else. But it's also where they're going to teach that. They are going and they're seeking to go to the remotest parts of some of these countries, places where they need development more than anything. And still they're coming here to give them this comprehensive sexuality education as if it's really equal to development, or as if it will lead to development, which we know it won't.
Man, that actually takes me back to about 8 years ago when I was in a township in South Africa called Kayamandi, and I was working with like first graders, and they had a little pamphlet out, but it was about HIV/AIDS. But it also included this knowledge and information about their body and about sex and how you don't get. And I'm like, they like first grade. And I have pictures of it. I have to find these pictures because I was so floored that they would have this information. They would be giving this information in a coloring form. So it was like the kids could color it in and at the same time learn about their body, learn about HIV/AIDS, how do you stay clean, and all of that. And it was all written in Xhosa, in a township for grade ones. And it's like you say, you have this township or this remote area and they don't have passable roads, or, all of the roads aren't paved, or there's no running water and there aren't, bathrooms in homes, but there is this comprehensive sex education that is being taught in the primary school to grade ones.
Yes, that's it. It shows you where these very wealthy organizations and very wealthy donors, where their heart truly is. They have everything in their world. They have everything in their homes and in their communities. But then you go into a slum, and the first thing you want to think about is, let's give the coloring books to these children about the naked human body. And these are like the tiniest babies, and the way they are being taught, and the way, who's teaching them that. All of the things that you should really be afraid in a lot of these communities, there's recorded high levels of sexual exploitation. And we do know it. People don't talk a lot about it, but we do know it, that it is mostly during these times when, the so-called sex education is happening between some strange teachers and children. Mm-hmm. That's when these kind of sexual exploitations go on. Sexual abuse goes on in these schools through these projects. And these projects are being underwritten and being funded by Western entities. But they don't care, because they come in, they throw this money down, and they walk away. What you should be doing, or what they should have been so desperate about, should have been to be desperate that these children's level of education be improved. You want these children to get as much quality education as they can get, so that they can leave these communities. Teach them the best literature. Let them find the ones who are best in maths, and get them through their gifts out of these communities. But instead, they want them to stay there and coloring about your body, about the condoms. And it was also, in fact, in South Africa, is the first place and the only place I have ever been. I've been to different countries in the world where I've seen condoms in a restroom for free.
Yes.
Where you don't have to put any coin. Yeah, you just pick it. It's all over.
I'm not sure if the statistic is still the same, but a few years ago, South Africa had the highest rape count in the world, like anywhere. They were known as the rape capital. And so it's like you're saying, when we are more comfortable addressing, like, how do you stay safe, or, the whole idea of this comprehensive sex education, instead of talking about your education, talking about the fact that we have issues with rape, talking about all of these other issues, there's something extremely wrong.
It is, yeah. It's horrific, yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about it on the global scale, but let's bring it back to America a little bit. Do you think that Planned Parenthood targets low income and or minority communities here in the States?
Absolutely. I think it was in a census a couple of years ago. I've seen someone who has actually done the calculations that about 79% as of that year, 79% of Planned Parenthood facilities are located within 1 mile radius of an ethnic minority community. It is also very obvious and evident when you look at statistics from cities where they're collecting it. If you look at New York City, I have perused through those statistics so often, and I've gone through various years to see that it's not a fluke, that the number of births, live births for Black women is less. In all those years, like 4 or 5 consecutive years, is less than the number of abortions by Black women. That wherever you care to check minority groups and check this data following ethnicity, you would see that the abortion rate among Black women or other ethnic minority groups is usually higher, much higher, significantly higher. Then who's aborting the babies? It's the abortion industry. And they know, because it's a business model. They are doing it in the United States. They're also doing it in the United Kingdom, that in parts of London where you have Black and ethnic minority groups living in these poorer, let's just call them poorer parts of London, you will always find in that neighborhood or around that neighborhood the abortion industry ready to take advantage. It's happening everywhere where you have the poorer people, even among the white people as well, be it Europe or America, you will also find the targeting of the poorer ones. So low income people are at risk. The ethnic minority people are also very much at risk.
I think I'm very concerned because in America, I think somewhere around like 12 to 13% of our population is African American. Then, if you say that women are roughly half of that, let's say that they're about 8% of the population, but then some percentage of that are actually ovulating and capable of having a pregnancy. Maybe yes. You're at like 5% or something of the total population is having like 30% of the abortions. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It seems so disproportional. So it does, at least on just a superficial look at the statistics, it does seem like the Black community, ethnic minority communities are being targeted to some degree by abortion clinics, Planned Parenthood, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and also the messaging. You will see it in the messaging. Last year, there was a day I just sat through. I said, I'm going to see it online. And I was going through some of the abortion organizations, particularly in America, because they're very good in social media, if I can say that. They're constantly, you can see that they're playing you can see their hand. You can see what they're planning by going through their social media pages or platforms. If you have the time, just do that. That anytime I see something like Nero doing a kind of advertisement, or they're doing a publicity thing, they use Black women a lot. They use, what you call in America, women of color. Okay, I'm not American, so yeah. So I always see Americans saying the women of color. So yeah, they always find a way to use Black women in their art or in their publicity things done. So even when they write articles, these pro-abortion websites, even the websites like Reuters. So they do use Black women whenever they're talking about choice, body right, or they're fighting any kind of pro-life law that comes out in Alabama or wherever. If you see the article, most times they will use a Black woman to show that they're taking away rights. They're taking away our rights. So they're using Black women constantly as a shield for the entire abortion industry. But if you think about it, who is in charge in the abortion industry? Cecile Richards, it's people in that class. This is the elite, the people who themselves are living in mansions. A lot of the abortionists, these are the elite, and they are using the poor people who will then go back to the squalor of their communities when they, finish aborting their babies. But the money, at the end of the day, the money they are bringing into the abortion industry is unthinkable. And the abortion industry continues to grow as a monster on the blood of the innocent babies being aborted, as well as the money of the poorest people, of the poor.
We don't sit here. We need to just breathe for a minute.
Because that is powerful. I have so many thoughts, but go ahead with your question.
Well, I was just going to say that, I don't really know what I was going to say anymore. Yeah.
That's all right.
I don't. I have to collect myself.
Yeah.
Because it's true. One of the things I was thinking is that they do use, and here we have this term about Black bodies. And so you will see Black bodies before like abortion ads or in front of abortion ads and things like that. But we also have this huge conversation happening right now about diversity. And so I feel like it's a double-edged sword. Like, we want to make sure that our ads are diverse. And so we're going to use a Black body or a woman of color to promote this reproductive health or abortions. And it's like, it's really just a double stab. Like,
when your diversity becomes targeting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they know what they're doing, though. They do know what they're doing. It's very unfortunate that when they push so hard for that diversity is when it has to do with abortion. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, it's the Black babies that don't make it. Yeah. It's the offspring of the African Americans that just are not there. And the populations of the African Americans should have been higher by now, with regards to the rest of the population, but it's not, because a lot of the babies are going by way of Planned Parenthood. It's really unfortunate, and that there are politicians as well sitting in your capital who are fighting constantly, shamelessly, for the right for women to be able to have their babies killed. It's a horrible thing, which I think we will see the full repercussions of it in history, and hopefully history should take note and keep the record exactly where history has kept very, very carefully and very well the records of things like slavery. Those records, I'm hoping that it doesn't fall off the way, that we would know in time who supported what, and what how vicious were they in their advocacy, and how careless were they in their advocacy, because they're all going on record and saying all of these things. History will not forget. One day abortion is really going to be completely overturned, because science is really moving very quickly. As I said, I am a scientist myself and I work in healthcare, and we see these incredible advancements. And I keep wondering, for how long is abortion going to continue with all these things that we now know, with new technology, with everything that we know? So much new treatments are being devised where babies can be treated while they are still in the womb, where even intricate surgeries can be done while the baby is still in the womb, and the pregnancy and gestation continues, and the baby is born at the right time or close to the right time. How long are we going to be able to continue to tell the lie that the child in the womb can be disposed of, when we are also putting in a lot of money to save the life of that baby, or to make the life of that baby better by giving treatment long before birth? I work in hematology, and there are actual tests that we do to find out things like blood group of a baby long before the baby is born. So science is really advancing, and I'm so grateful for that. That's one thing I love really about just, life in the West, is that we see science moving, and it's moving in affirmation of the sanctity of human life. And I'm praying that society will come together and rally together and have the real courage it will take to overcome abortion. And yes, I know women go through a lot of problems. As you had mentioned at the beginning, we have challenges. We have, so many things to deal with in some cases. But I also know that society can and has changed for the better, that people are making more room for women to give women care, to meet women at the points where they need help, to give help to women who are in crisis situations, to accompany women who are fearing for their lives, or those who feel they really desperately have to abort their babies in order for them to survive maybe an abusive relationship or something. No, society is getting much better, and I hope that we get all that much better, that good women can get that real assurance that society is with us, and so we can together abolish this horrific practice called abortion.
Boy, that's such a good place to land the interview, Uju. And as I was reflecting on what you were saying just now, I was thinking about the great loss of all the potential future scientists and priests and politicians and mothers and fathers and others who could contribute to making the world better, who could contribute to improving things and finding cures for diseases. And I just love how you ended that in such a positive place, because our hope is that someday this atrocity will be overturned and we will have a different sensibility as across the board in all countries, that human life is valuable and that we want to work to cultivate life rather than death.
Yes.
So
yeah. One of the things that I wanted to ask you at the beginning, and I completely skipped over it and forgot, but I know that you're a woman of faith, and I wondered, like, how does your faith impact you or compel you to speak out about these things?
Yeah, that's fine. I know you wanted to ask it at the beginning, but it's good that we can still talk about it towards the end, because I think it's also like another good place to kind of round things out. So I am a woman of faith. I'm a Catholic. I am a devout Catholic. And yes, I am also a scientist, and a lot of my convictions I have supported by science. So I know, and I see these things at my workplace, or in my own experiences, and in reading scientific papers and things like that. So that is the one thing. So the conviction is there, and the conviction can be there even for people who are not yet convinced by faith. But this is what my faith does. In this fight that we fight, we do have real opponents who could even qualify as enemies, who see us as enemies. When you see them reject pro-life people, you would know that we do have enemies, even if you don't call them that. But my faith then compels me to not hate my enemies, to love them, and to still be clear in the message, but also find a way within my life and within myself to be able to love in the midst of the mission, doing whatever it is. So the faith does keep me going. The faith also ensures that I don't get tired or get weary. So every morning God wakes me up, and then you are sometimes just tired of what you're seeing. You go online, you're tired of what's going on. But then God then comes with the courage that can only come from him, and gives me the ability to just keep going, the ability to keep moving, knowing that even if I don't see the results of what is being done and all the work that we are doing, it doesn't matter, it's for him. So even if I die doing this, even if I never get to see the end of this, it still doesn't matter, because the work has gone into his vineyard, and it stays and it's meant to outlive us. So that's fine. It's going somewhere. It's for something. And at the end of the day, it's really for the love of God. So the faith does keep the work going, and it ensures that that I never lose sight of what is most important, which is that the God is the author of life, and everything that we do at the end of the day, in all of this fight for human rights, yes, it's for human rights, but at the end of the day, it's all because we are all made in the image and likeness of God Almighty.
Amen and amen. Yes. Good. Well, thank you so much for joining us and talking with us. It's been amazing. So informative.
Thank you. Very much so. And I want to encourage people to get connected with Uju.
Yes.
Yes. Find me on Twitter.
Yes. Twitter. Obianuju.
That's it. Yeah.
And then check out the website at cultureoflifeafrica.com.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Uju. It's just a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure too. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. Bye. Yeah.
Okay. And
the magic of
she arrived. She arrived. You guys, well, welcome. Welcome back.
Yes.
We missed you.
Oh, thank you.
It was a rough, 15 minutes without you. I'm glad you're here.
Okay.
You guys, that interview, so much wisdom put forward, so many thoughts. Oh my gosh. I was thinking about that like all day. Just the fact of some of the statistics that she brought out, that there's more aid going forward into Africa right now in many of the countries than there is money going toward like things for water and sanitation, or that there were more Black babies dying than there were, being born in New York.
Yeah.
There's so much information. And I think that a lot of times we don't understand just how grave the situation is at this current cultural moment.
Yeah.
Because, like everyone, or we do anyway, I'll speak for myself. I hate abortion. I am definitely pro-life. And I think that is where, I'll speak from and say, no, abortion's wrong, but I don't understand all the time of why it's so wrong and exactly what's happening on the back end to promote abortion.
Okay. It's been I think this is a journey that we will continue to be on. We have other interviews in mind to continue the conversation about pro-life issues, and I'm looking forward to those things. But Uju was just amazing and so gracious and so generous. She tweeted us today, and Monique's phone was going crazy.
Just went off. It was crazy. It was so crazy. But you also mentioned, and I forgot to mention this, that the Women's March was today.
The Women's March was today in Washington, D.C., and then they had satellite marches in other cities.
What is the Women's March exactly?
Well, it started, the first one was, I guess it was maybe 3 years ago now when Trump was first inaugurated. Mm-hmm. And it was a couple weeks after, or a week, or I don't know, days after the inauguration. And it's, people can go look at it. Their website is womensmarch.com, and you could read their agenda. And it's just such a timely interview, because I was telling you earlier today, I was looking at their website, and I was like, okay, what do these people stand for? Am I this kind of woman? I don't think I'm this kind of woman, because I see on a big balloon right on their agenda page about reproductive rights and justice, which is exactly what Uju was educating us about. And I'm like, oh, now I know what this means.
The rights and justice for whom?
Yes.
That's where things get a little murky, is that we talk about social justice, we talk about rights, but those rights aren't for everyone.
Yeah. And they don't seem to be for the unborn in this agenda. So anyways, I don't think I'm that kind of woman but I know they want to speak for us, but I don't think we're those kind of women.
Yeah.
We're not going to be wearing pink hats out in the Washington Mall. So
there were some comments.
Yeah. Let's get to those.
While we played the interview back, you want to take the comments?
Well, we had some, I thought you made a really good summary of, in many countries, abortion gets more funding than things like water and sanitation. I mean, I think that's a really good takeaway from this interview. Kimba said that funny how having sex is never what it is, the choice in their
Annette
argument.
said that too. Annette and Kimba both said something to the effect of, it's funny how sex is never the choice, or sex isn't what we're regulating. And I agree with that. And I also just think that that's the current worldview that the lens that people are looking through. It's about what feels good for me, what is going to be best for me. And if I don't like it, then I don't have to deal with it.
Yeah. Maria says she's a little less optimistic about society's future with abortion than I think that what she's saying than Uju. And I pray that Uju is right. Uju is she was very optimistic. In her mind, one day abortion will be looked upon the same way that we look upon slavery. Yeah. It will be outlawed and it will be looked on as being morally reprehensible. I hope she's right. Yes. I hope that's a true and prophetic word, because things are pretty bad right now. And we should probably say, like, in our worldview as Christians, sometimes people make choices to have abortions before they're saved, before they know Christ. Yeah. One of my coworkers, she and I have had several conversations to this effect about how she had an abortion when she was very young. I think she was like maybe 20 or something. And she didn't know Christ, and she thought, that was just what she should do. Mm-hmm. It didn't occur to her. And then she said, after she became a Christian, within like minutes after she became a Christian, the Holy Spirit just convicted her of, oh my goodness, I killed my child. Wow. And so no matter where people are in their journey, we do want to assure them that, there's forgiveness, there's grace. And if people have been injured in terms of an abortion emotionally, and it's often a traumatic event, there's help. If you go to your local pregnancy resource center, they usually have small groups to help people recover from that trauma. I have a very good friend who has been leading those groups for years, and she's an abortion survivor. She had 3 abortions, and now is a very dedicated leader to helping other women come out of that trauma. So, there's no shame, there's no condemnation in Christ. And, there's forgiveness for that. So we don't want to be tackling this sensitive topic without at least saying a word about that.
Yeah, and we also don't want to enter it in a place of like condemnation and judgment.
Yeah.
But we will speak out and speak truth into the matter and the situation. That it is murder, it is killing.
Kimba says, I don't know any woman that has had an abortion that hasn't suffered emotionally. But you never hear the other side talk about that part. And that's very true. It's not talked about very much. I mean, recently there was a Twitter campaign of like, shout your abortion, or some hashtag. And I thought, wow, that's sort of vile. But yeah, you just don't hear the other side talk about that.
No, I too have friends who have had abortions, and you don't hear about the ugly side of the after. What happens after I get home, after I've done this, and now I need to wrestle with my emotions and guilt, or, all of those things.
Yeah. So again, we'll continue these conversations. But
this was a good one. I really like this one.
Share this. Share. You guys.
Yes.
Should we have to talk about the share?
This is a good
I need powder. I've been working all day. Like, this is not okay.
Sorry, folks. I don't know what to say.
Should we go on?
Yes.
All right.
So
the mega
Martin
show.
Luther King.
All right.
Yes, the mega show. People, fasten your seatbelts. Buckle in. Martin Luther King.
Junior,
yes. Whose real name was Michael.
Yes.
Yes.
I learned that.
Yes, his real name is Michael. And he was a Michael King Jr. And then his father went on like some trip. And I want to say it was a trip to, I don't know, some religious place. I don't really know my religious places, folks. Let's just be clear. But he went on a trip to a religious place. And his father was a pastor, like a devout Orthodox pastor.
Baptist minister.
But he believed like in orthodoxy and all that, and changed his name. And then changed his son name because they will be Martin Luther. And I was like, that's deep.
Now,
Are you going to change your name to Mary?
No.
You can have Mary 1, Mary 2?
No.
I don't know.
No.
Okay, never mind.
All right. So MLK is a federal holiday. It's coming up on Monday.
Yes.
So we thought it would be good to spend a little time talking about that. Now,
I jokingly refer to it as Black People's Day.
Okay.
I know that's probably horrible.
I'm probably not allowed to joke about that since I'm white.
I do. I feel like that's our day.
It's his birthday.
Yes.
And, there's many people that really respect, I call it, they almost sort of venerate MLK. Mm-hmm. I mean, and we sort of make fun of Catholic and Orthodox Christians of venerating saints, but there's some people that I think border on venerating MLK. Like, you can't say anything against him. He's almost like...
kind of like y'all do with C.S. Lewis.
Like the fourth member of the Trinity.
Let's be real.
Something.
Yeah, you ever talk to somebody about C.S. Lewis? Ooh, C.S. Lewis? I learned everything. I took a class because of C.S. Lewis.
And then you come here and then you're like, who's he?
Exactly.
Who
is he? Exactly.
Our friend Lori Stewart takes us to a play on C.S. Lewis and she's like, who is this guy?
But I knew Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe. Yes, yeah. I didn't know that. But yes, and that you get the day off. I probably will not have the day off, but yes. So we do hold the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King in very high esteem.
So I'm glad that you said that he's a reverend and a doctor, because I kind of always wondered, like, was he a real doctor? And I went to the MLK Museum when I was in Atlanta a couple years ago, and he earned a PhD.
Yes, he did.
In theology from Boston University, which is a Catholic university, I believe, in 1955. I got to go to his church, Ebenezer Baptist Church. I really encourage people, if you're in Atlanta.
Atlanta?
Yeah.
For some reason, I did not think it was in Atlanta.
Yeah, it's in Atlanta.
Oh. There was another state I was thinking of.
He was shot in Memphis.
Yes.
But he lived in Atlanta.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you can go back to the first picture, that's the church. It's on the street corner there. I love this one because it's like from the 60s or something. And it still pretty much looks like that. What they've done is they preserved that church, and then they preserved the whole city block. All the houses on the block look like you're just walking into this time capsule from the early 60s.
Wow.
And all the houses are painted exactly the way that they were then. They've preserved the whole street. So his family lived in a house just like, I don't know, like a couple hundred feet from the church. So he grew up in the house and then lived in the house. And there's a big mega church now that's on the opposite street corner. That's the real Ebenezer Baptist Church. It's like the new Ebenezer Baptist Church, where you can go, and that's where people go today. But you can go into that old one, and you can tour. It was very cool.
And they have like a loop of him preaching and things like that.
It's so moving. You can go sit in the balcony section. I don't know but yeah, that's just what it looks like on the inside. So I was up in that balcony
with all those people.
No, there's no people.
Okay, but I was just making sure.
I picked this picture because I think it just is nice in how it depicts, a very typical service back then. But you can go sit in that balcony area, and they have an audio on loop of him preaching a sermon. It's very moving. It was very moving. I sat there for quite a while and listened. And I'm kind of a nerd about historic churches. I really love historic churches.
Even when she says she loves historic churches, she really wants to buy one and fill it like with all kind of ancient kind of stuff. Yeah. She wants a pew in our house. Folks,
what?
Can someone pray for us?
Yes. My dream is that after the children grow up and move away, like we redecorate the house and sort of make it look like with church themes, like stained glass windows and stuff, and a pew, and fill it with Johnny Cash memorabilia. But I digress. Okay.
Tracy says, you should come to New Hampshire. We have lots of historic churches here. No.
Yes.
Then she will
Tracy,
have ideas.
bring us.
Ideas.
Yes.
No.
Book us a speaking gig at a conference. So we can
I don't want a pulpit in my bedroom.
Oh, that's so fun to go stand behind the pulpit in historic churches. I love doing that.
But we digress.
Okay. All right. This is me. Okay, so his theology. So let's talk about that.
Well, okay, wait. Before we get to his theology, let's talk about why we celebrate him. Why do we? He is like, because he was such a voice for Black people. Like, when he came on the scene, and I feel like he was like the beginning of the civil rights era. He was the one who really said, you know what? No, I know that people are like throwing water hoses on you and they're letting their dogs loose on you and they're spitting on you and you can't drink from the same water fountain or use the same bathroom. But we are not going to participate and retaliate the way that people may expect us to. Yeah. We're going to peacefully protest. We are going to show our resistance in a different way. Because at the same time, you had Malcolm X, who was by any means necessary. And so
that was his philosophy, by any
means necessary. And King wasn't like that. Now, we'll talk about him being a pacifist and things like that. But I really think that he spoke into this idea that no matter what someone else says about you, you have like purpose. You are created in God's image. You have dignity, value, and worth. He was speaking a different message than what a lot of people had heard. Now, there are tons of Black people who do not agree with his agenda at all, who were completely for the Malcolm X side. Like, no, we need to go ahead and knock buildings down. We need to riot. And he said, no, that's not how we're going to do things.
So there was sort of a time where these two philosophies were competing of how are we going to overcome segregation? How are we going to overcome Jim Crow laws? Are we going to do it the MLK way or the Malcolm X way? Okay.
And I think still today, there are people who will be like, no, we need to, by any means necessary. I was just somewhere last year and I heard that exact phrase, by any means necessary, we will, march forward. We will knock down oppression and those kind of things. And I just think his voice is so important because he did not stand for that.
That's interesting because growing up as a Baptist, and there was this very historic church where he grew up. His father was a pastor there as well. But then he goes off to seminary, and in the early part of the 20th century, there's this rise of this movement called neo-orthodoxy, and it's sort of a version of classical liberalism. And MLK is heavily influenced by this. He reads a lot of German neo-Orthodox scholars, and he starts kind of working on his theology of pacifism. Gandhi was a very big influence of his in seminary. And he kind of goes through a process where, you just listen to any MLK speech or sermon, the images are highly influenced and tied to and tethered to Christianity. But he's this kind of mix of historic Christian terminology, but through the lens of classical liberalism and neo-orthodoxy. He really is a product of 20th century theology in many regards. But I think what's really interesting to me about MLK is that he had a very well-developed theology of work and of humanity. When we call this, in the technical term for this in theology, is anthropology. He had a very rigorous doctrine of man. And I think it was mostly correct. I think that it was a good and helpful corrective to the church at this time. And he really just had a very robust theology of what it meant to love your neighbor in a very tangible way. He wasn't interested in just talking about heaven as some pie in the sky thing. He wanted to have conversations about how do we love our neighbor now? Mm-hmm. How do we bring the kingdom of God here now? And how do we build up each other's dignity in the image of God and see people as inherently valuable? So it's from that theological foundation, I actually think is very orthodox and sound, that he builds his intellectual project of the civil rights struggle. And I think it's important to put him in that context, is that that part of it really came out of his theology.
Yeah.
So is it okay if we play the clip?
You know?
Or did you want to add a comment to that?
No.
Okay.
Nope. I'm going to save my comments for the end.
Okay.
Except for Maria says that she used to have a pew and she's still looking for one. And I was like, whoa.
See, Maria gets me.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Keep going.
That's my language right there. Okay. So we're going to listen to a little excerpt. You can go on YouTube and watch the whole thing. But what I love about this is it's from a junior high school. MLK goes to speak at a junior high school in 1967. And I'm thinking, this is how far we've fallen, people. You would never get junior hires to listen to a speech like this now in the age of the internet. This is a fantastic speech. Go watch the whole thing. It's only like 25 minutes or something. We're just going to play a little clip here.
Number one in your life's blueprint should be a deep belief in your own dignity, your own worth, and your own somebodyness. Don't allow anybody to make you feel that you are nobody. Always feel that you count. Always feel that you have worth. And always feel that your life has ultimate significance. Now that means that you should not be ashamed of your color. You know, it's very unfortunate that in so many instances our society has placed a stigma on the Negro's color. And you know, there are some Negroes who are ashamed of themselves. But don't be ashamed of your color. Don't be ashamed of your biological features. Somehow you must be able to say in your own lives and really believe it, I am black but beautiful. And believe it in your heart. And therefore, you need not be lured into purchasing cosmetics advertised to make you lighter. Neither do you need to process your hair to make it appear straight. I have good hair, and it is as good as anybody else's hair in the world. And we've got to believe that. Now, in your life's blueprint, be sure that you have that a principle of somebodyness. Secondly, in your life's blueprint, you must have as a basic principle the determination to achieve excellence in your various fields of endeavor. You're going to be deciding as the days and the years unfold what you will do in life, what your life's work will be. And once you discover what it will be, set out to do it and to do it well. And I say to you, my young friends, that doors are opening to each of you. Doors of opportunity are opening to each of you that were not open to your mothers and to your fathers. And the great challenge facing you is to be ready to enter these doors as they open. Ralph Waldo Emerson, the great essayist, said in a lecture back in 1871 that if a man can write a better book or preach a better sermon or make a better mousetrap than his neighbor, even if he builds his house in the woods, the world will make a beaten path to his door. That hadn't always been true, but it will become increasingly true. And so I would urge you to study hard, to burn the midnight oil. I would say to you, Don't drop out of school, and I understand all of the sociological reasons why we often drop out of school. But I urge you, in spite of your economic plight, in spite of the situation that you are forced to live so often with intolerable conditions, stay in school. And when you discover what you're going to be in life, set out to do it as if God Almighty called you at this particular moment in history to do it. And just don't set out to do a good Negro job, but do a good job that anybody could do. Don't set out to be just a good Negro doctor, a good Negro lawyer, a good Negro school teacher, a good Negro preacher, a good Negro barber, a beautician, a good Negro skilled laborer. For if you set out to do that, you have already flunked your matriculation exam for entrance into the University of Integration. Set out to do a good job, and do that job so well that the living, the dead, or the unborn couldn't do it any better.
I kind of love that.
Good old Uncle Dr. Reverend Martin.
Yeah. I actually watch that whole speech from time to time. That's a good one. Well, let me ask you a few questions about it.
Okay.
Some things that he says there. Again, this is junior hires, people. He's quoting Emerson to junior hires. He's using words like matriculation. I love that. This is how far we have fallen as a culture. Okay, so let me ask you, why does in the beginning, well, first of all, I love it that he talks about this idea of somebodyness. Mm-hmm. That's a theme that you hear in a lot of his speeches of don't ever let somebody tell you you're not somebody. Don't let them deny your somebodyness. To me, that is very echoing of the idea of being created in the image of God, having value, dignity, and worth. Yeah. Maybe you could comment on that. Why do you think that was an important, timely issue for him?
I think it was important because even though slavery had, ended maybe 100 years before, during that time, we were not considered full people, full human, and so then you now have to kind of unwind yourself from all of that. What does all of that mean? Like, I understood, or they understood that they were full people, but according to the law, they weren't. And so how do we now teach young Black people when so many derogatory words are being spoken over them, when systems aren't fair and society isn't fair, when they can't go some places or they can only go in certain places, that you still have dignity, value, and worth. Yes, your current society may be corrupt and misled and full of sin, but that does not dictate nor change who you are intrinsically.
Yeah, I love that. Just know your own somebodyness. I love that. The other thing he talked about there is about the hair. Now, we did a segment on hair a couple months ago about the Black experience and hair.
Yes, and I now have braids. Yes, I do. And it's all colored in the back. Yes, all kind of colors.
So why does he say, be proud of being Black, be proud of your hair? Like, why is he telling junior high kids that?
Because hair, skin color, eye color in society at that time was one way. It was white. It was blue eyes. It was straight hair. Yeah. And if you didn't have that, then you weren't beautiful. If you were a darker skinned Black person compared to a lighter skinned Black person, the darker skin wasn't as beautiful as the lighter skin. You either had good hair or you had bad hair. You had good hair or you had naps. And those are even still words that play in culture today. But what he's saying is, don't judge yourself based on the person with straight hair. Your hair is beautiful. Hair is beautiful. And so I think it's important to instill those messages, especially at that time, into young people to say, hey, you're going out into the world soon and you are beautiful. You are somebody.
Yeah, I love that. God has created you a certain way and your hair a certain way and your skin a certain color, and that's okay. Mm-hmm. You don't need to bleach your skin or straighten your hair, however it comes out of your head. that's part of your dignity.
Your skin was very real. I don't know if anybody still does it today, but it was very real. And things like a perm, which Black people call perms, not a white perm, it would also be called a relaxer. So
it makes it straight.
It makes it straight.
For white people, a perm
makes it curly.
But
I mean, perm started out with lye. People putting lye on your hair to make it straight. There were big extremes that we went to make sure that we were considered beautiful. We talked about this on the Brady Bunch a couple months ago when I was like, oh, look, everybody's eyes are blue. And you were like, you just dashed my childhood. But this
I never noticed that.
These are things that I noticed because these are things that were presented as being beautiful.
So that message at that time would have been really countercultural for Black people to be proud of not who they are, but added to that, like behind that is the theology of my dignity as a somebody, as a created person, the way God created my hair, my skin, my eye color, that is beautiful.
Yes.
That's really what he was saying,
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to bring up was his theology of work that he talked about in the second half of the clip. That every human being, this was a critical part of MLK's theology, that every human being not only had intrinsic value, but that all labor has dignity, from the white collar worker to the sanitation worker. And he was part of he gave a very famous speech as part of the sanitation strike. And he does the part about don't ever let somebody diminish your somebodiness in that speech, because he was trying to teach them that even the culture, society may see you as a lowly sanitation worker, you are still somebody. And that is a very powerful part of his theology that I think is very good and robust and biblically accurate. Another thing that we talked about, a third point, is just he had an extremely robust view of loving your neighbor and exploring that. And so anyways, there's just a lot of really good themes there that I think are worth celebrating and being knowledgeable about in MLK's theology. Now for the more kind of
I'll call it area of concern.
Areas
that people may not be aware of.
Yeah.
And to me, I honestly did. I battled with this part of it today. But after we kind of go through some of the areas of concern, I'll say why I think it's important that people know about this.
Okay. Well, as I said earlier, MLK was a classical liberal. He did rethink historic Christianity through the lens that, that he had grown up with more of a historic Christian faith in a traditional Baptist setting. But then he kind of detaches from that a little bit in seminary. And so he kind of picks up what we would now call more of a social gospel. And he did reject a lot of what he called biblical literalism. For example, he didn't believe in the story of Jonah was a real story, a real historical event. There's record of him referring to the Bible as mythological. He doubted whether Jesus was really born of a virgin. I think I have a graphic here from a paper. There's Stanford is preserving a lot of King's lesser known writings. You can go search for this essay, The Humanity and Divinity of Jesus, where he talks about his theology. And this is a seminary paper, so keep that in mind. It's a seminary paper. Mm-hmm. And so, but he has some discussion in here where he denies the Orthodox view of Christ's divinity. He thinks that he was divine, but not in the normal sense of like that he's all God. Yeah.
But that when I was reading it, I was like, what do you believe? It's not that he grew into his divinity, but that his divinity came because of his obedience.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was like, oh, I haven't heard it that way before.
Yeah. So he was kind of born human and then he became God sort of
through obedience.
It's a very unorthodox view of Christ's divinity.
Yeah. And so in the end, he even says that the Orthodox view is basically wrong.
Yeah.
Like he pretty much is clear, in saying that.
So he would be definitely out of step with, the ancient faith traditions of Catholic and Orthodox and even the historic Protestantism. He was definitely a 20th century classical liberal, neo-Orthodox liberal. I would squarely place him in that tradition. So, I think that with MLK, we have to kind of think of him as a somewhat of a complicated being. Like there's some people who are saying, oh, he denied, the divinity of Christ, so therefore he's not a Christian. I'm in no position to judge that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's not my place.
That's not my business.
My place.
God hasn't made me the judge over that. That's the Lord's business. He doesn't have 100% heretical beliefs. He does have some beliefs that technically I would say are outside of Christianity. But he also, like I said earlier, has a very robust theology of work and robust theology of man. So those are good things. And I'm just trying to put him in his historical context. So maybe you can just talk a little bit about his legacy.
I think it's important that people understand this part because as a kid growing up, every Martin Luther King Day, there's the Martin Luther King Day parade. I don't know where all of you guys live, but usually Martin Luther King Street, Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard is what it was always called in every state that I've been to. I find one, but it's usually like in the lower income area. And I don't really know what that's about, if it's like we can only put it here. But usually wherever I've been, Martin Luther King Day parade, no matter what state I've been in, the parade is going down, folks. You have the high school bands out. You have people usually selling bean pies in LA. I mean, I grew up in LA. And
what's a bean pie?
Oh, they're like the little Nation of Islam pies. They're a little bit, yeah. It's a whole nother show, whole nother topic. But you have people
Google that. All right,
selling CDs and DVDs, probably usually bootleg. But there's like it's a whole situation and event, and it's a lot of fun. It is. And in church, though, on Martin Luther King Day, like the Sunday before, they're talking about it. There's some kind of showcase. So a kid does a speech, like something. And but what I was going to say was it's important to also bring it full light, full circle, so that we can understand, like we promote him in church as being someone who held to orthodoxy. We present him as being,
fully Christian and
fully Christian. He didn't, question scripture. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, Martin Luther King. So I think it's important that we have realistic views of people as well, because we're people. And when we are presenting someone to me before the congregation, I think it's important to know, like, hey, this is what he believed as well. And that doesn't diminish his work. He did amazing work. Yeah. And he also had these views that don't line up exactly with scripture. Yeah. And so how do we hold both?
And it's complicated. You and I have had so many conversations about people in history, and I'm like, well, on the one hand, they did this really noble thing, and on the other hand, they were kind of shady in this way. And people are complicated and somewhat messy. And with MLK, I mean, there's all these rumors about him being, having extramarital affairs and that whole part of it too. And so our purpose here is not to vilify him, but just to say, like, somebody can have a legitimate legacy, do good work, and have a noble contribution to society, and at the same time have troubling views and troubling behaviors. And that's the messy world of being a sinner. Yeah. And so we have to look at it, in a fully orbed way. So.
Yeah, but I thought I learned quite a few things doing this and reading the thing put out by Stanford. And at the end of the day, I'm like, good old Uncle Dr. Martin, Reverend Luther King, I'm thankful for his work. I'm thankful for the stand that he took. Yeah. And he also has views that don't line up with mine. Yeah. And it doesn't negate my gratitude for the life and legacy that he lived so that we could move forward in society.
That's a good word. Okay, we better wrap it up here on the mega edition.
This really is a mega edition, folks.
All right, real quick, we're going to have the tweet.
Oh, y'all, she came back and she came with a tweet. Because remember, I was like, we don't have no tweet. But we did. Hey. Oh,
hey. Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, really quick, tweet of the week. No, pie.
Oh, it's bean pie. Sorry.
Bean pie.
No. Ew, that's nasty.
I had to find out what it was.
I don't even know.
There we go.
Okay, the tweet of the week. Oh my word, I have 20 notifications. Oh no, that's you. Okay,
What?
is Elisa Childers. I was on the Elisa Childers podcast. It's like so amazing. I can't even believe it. It's like I was a guest on my favorite podcast. How is this my life?
That's awesome. It really was awesome.
Yeah, that was very exciting. So anyways, the tweet of the week is go listen to my conversation with Elisa Childers about MOPS and the research that I did in that whole endeavor last summer and fall. And you can go check that out on Elisa's website. And so the title of the podcast is MOPS Shifting Toward Progressive Christianity. You can get it on Apple Podcasts. Just search for Elisa Childers. And people should be subscribing to Elisa's podcast anyways, because
She's pretty awesome.
It's a great podcast. It really is my favorite podcast. So she has great content. So
That's it. Hey,
we made it to the end.
We made it to the end. Please go and check out our website.
Yeah.
allthethingshow.com. Like us on Facebook, All the Things Show. And
share
us. Yes. That's the best support we can get. We love, and need the shares.
Yeah. Help get the word out. You can catch our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify. And if they want the video version, they can go on YouTube.
Yes. Wow. Hey, like me. You can like me on Twitter. If you're on Twitter in the Twitter world, connect with me at what am I? The Real Monique D. I do go on Twitter. I do. The Real Monique D. And you are everywhere as Theology Mom. Yep. Twitter, Facebook, all the things. Yeah. And you know what?
What?
We made it.
We made it to the end.
Yes.
And next week is
next week
is the Women in Apologetics Conference. So make sure that you've subscribed to the live stream. If you can't see us in person, if you do come to Biola, y'all better introduce yourselves.
Yes. If you come to Biola, introduce yourselves. If you can't get there, have a live stream party. Host some people. Have them over for lunch or breakfast and lunch, and watch the conference. It's going to be awesome. Natasha Crane's going to be there. Alicia Wood from Ravi Zacharias Ministries. Yeah. We're going to be there.
Lots of people.
Yes, Hillary is going to be there. Jane Pantig's going to be there.
Lori Stewart.
Yes,
all our past guests.
All the people are going to be there. Don't miss it. It's going to be so good. But we're still going to have a show next week. Yes, we will still have a show next week. So
plus, we may have some spontaneous live streams from the conference. So make sure that you're subscribed and have that notifications bell on.
Yes.
So, all right, my friends. Thanks for watching.
Peace out.
Bye-bye.
There's nothing